There is one sound that does something to the human brain that almost nothing else can replicate. Not a scream, not a crash, not even a voice. A knock. 3 knocks, specifically. Slow, deliberate, spaced exactly right. Knock, knock, knock. Something about that rhythm reaches into the oldest part of your nerve system, the part that was built long before civilization, long before doors existed, and pulls a wire it was never meant to pull. Because a knock means someone is out there, someone who knows you're in here, someone who's chosen this door, your door. Tight, I've 3 stories, 3 real people, 3 knocks that changed everything. Every single person in these stories did what is supposed to do. Stay inside, stay cool, try to be rational. And every single one of them found out that rational doesn't always save you. Turn the light same, let's begin. Donna was 52 years old and had lived along the same house in Rue High for 11 years. Not alone the way that sounds dramatic, alone in the ordinary, single way one who had raised her kids, watched them leave for college and careers in other states, and found she genuinely enjoyed the size. The house was hers. She knew every sound it made, every creak and settle and mechanical groan. She had lived there long enough to know the difference between the furnace kicking on and a branch falling on the roof, between the neighbor's cat on the porch and something heavier. She knew her house. She knew her sounds. Which is exactly why when the knock came at 3:14 in the morning on Thursday in November, she knew immediately it did not belong. She had been half asleep on the couch, late night television, the volume low, a glass of water on the coffee table, a blanket pulled up. The kind of accidental dozing that happens when you're comfortable and not fighting it. 3 knocks, slow, measured. Knock, knock, knock. She was awake before the third one finished. Not the groggy, swimming kind awake, the other kind, the cold, electric kind, where your body has made a threat assessment before your brain has caught up. She lay absolutely still under the blanket and listened to the silence that followed the knocking. The Tolodon murmured, the furnace breathed, the house was otherwise absolutely still. She checked her phone, 3:14 a.m. She lay there for 90 seconds. She can't lay, as the counting was the only thing that kept her from doing something impossible. And then the knock can get. Same rhythm, same pace, same 3 beats, spaced exactly the same as before. Knock, knock, knock. Donna was not the kind of one packed. She had worked as an ER nurse for 21 years. She'd same things that recalibrate most people's damage from crisis into something workable. She'd not fall apart. She'd not scream. She sat slowly, set her blanket aside, and picked up her 4. She called her neighbor first, a retired man named Harold who lived 2 houses down and had given her his number years ago precisely for situations like this. Harold did not answer. It was 3:14 in the morning, and Harold was 71 as sound sleeper. She did not call 911 yet because she told herself she didn't know enough of it. She needed information before she made that call. She was a nurse. She needed to assess before she acted. She moved to the front hallway in the dark, phone in hand, and approached the door. The peephole was one of those wide-angle fisheye lenses. She'd had it installed specifically because the original peephole was too narrow to see the full porch. She pressed her eye to it slowly, blocking the light from behind her so it wouldn't illuminate the gap around the lens. She looked. The porch was empty. Not almost empty. Empty. Nothing on the steps. Nothing at the door. Nothing visible in the motion sensor light that had activated and was now flooding the porch in the front path with white light. She stood back with a dart. She white. The motion light clicked off at the first sense, plunging the porch back into darkness. She told herself, drunk near, lost person, someone who knocked on the wrong door and let. Rule I, Thursday night, these things happen. People make mistakes, people war. She went back to the cat. She did not sleep. At 4:02 a.m., 48 minutes after the second knock, it came again. 3 knocks. Donna was on her feet before the third one landed. Here's what Donna had not thought until that third round of knocking. The doorbell came on. She didn't start the pre-spring. While those smart doorbells records motion-triggered view to the cloud, she used it mostly to see package deliveries. She had until that moment not thought of it as a security device. It was a convenience, a way to see the UPS driver from her kitchen. She opened the app on her phone. She went to the motion history. There was 3 motions, each approximately 45 to 50 minutes apart, each triggering 10-second clip. She tapped the first clip, 3:14 a.m. The clip showed the porch, the motion light on, the front path illuminated, and person standing on the bottom porch step, arm extended, hand at the door, mid-knock, captured exactly. The person was wearing dark clothing, a hood up, dark pants, dark shoes. They were facing the door directly, their back to the camera. The camera's wide angle captured their full silhouette. She watched the 10 cent. The person stood at the door, arm lowered after the knock, and then did not leave. They stood there for the remaining 8 seconds of the clip. She stood, wait. The clip ended. The motion light must have clicked off, ending the recording. She tapped a second click. 4:58 a.m. Same person, same position, same stools. This darn, in the 4 seconds before the clip ended, the person turned their head not toward the kind, but to the left, looking down the street, as if checking whether anyone was watching. The third clip was recording right now, live. Donna looked at the live feed. The porch was empty. The motion light was on. The person was gone. She called 911. 2 officers arrived within living it. They fixed the property, the 3, the neighboring yards. They found no one. But one of the owls, walking the perimeter, found something at the back of the owl. The side gate, the one that led from the front yard to the backyard, was open. Donna kept it latched, always. The officer noted this. And at the base of the back door, the door that opened into her kitchen, the door she never used at night, there were fresh marks around the lock, the kind of marks that suggested someone had been working on it. Quietly, while she was distracted by the knocking at the front. Donna moved out of the house within a week. She stayed with her daughter in Columbus for 2 months. She has since installed cameras at every entrance and a monitored alarm system. She still nurses. She still has alarm. She told me she thinks about the timing constantly. The 45-minute gap, the patience in. The knocking designed not to get her to open the front door, but to keep her focused on the shut door. What if someone worked on a bank? She looked at me. I think the knocking was never about the front door. I think it was about keeping me away from the back.
Story 2. The Campsite Knock. Ryan was 29 and camping alone in the Shawnee National Forest in southern Illinois. Solo camping was not new to him. He had been doing it since he was 19, a decade of weekends alone in the woods, building fires, reading, disconnecting. He was methodical about it. Bare canister for food storage, always, a fixed blade knife on his belt when he was out of camp, a satellite communicator clipped to his pack strap because he camped in areas with no cell signal, and he wasn't reckless. He had chosen a backcountry site 2 miles from the nearest trailhead, away from the car campers and the noise and the generator hum. He had hiked in on a Friday afternoon, set up his tent in a small clearing flanked by sandstone bluffs on 2 sides, built a fire, eaten his dinner, and been inside his sleeping bag by 9:30. He was a light sleeper. He had trained himself to be over years of solo camping. His brain stayed at a certain alert level even in sleep, cataloging sounds, dismissing the familiar ones, flagging the unfamiliar. At 11:47 p.m., something flagged. Not a sound from the forest, not an animal, not wind. A knock on the side of his tent. Let me be precise about this, because Ryan was precise about it when he told the story. It was not an animal bumping the tent. It was not a branch. It was not his gear shifting inside. It was a deliberate, knuckle-on-nylon knock. 3 distinct raps on the tent wall, approximately at shoulder height, from outside. Knock, Knock, knock. Ryan lay in his sleeping bag and did not move. His hand found his knife in the dark, by feel, by muscle memory, the way he'd practiced. He unsheathed it slowly and held it across his chest. He listened. The forest had gone quiet in the way forests go quiet when something is nearby. The insects that had been the background of his evening were silent. No frogs, no wind in the pines. Just the residual warmth of his lantern turned to its lowest setting, casting a dim amber glow through the tent walls. He waited. 30 seconds. A minute. Then, from the other side of the tent, the opposite wall. Knock, knock, knock. Same rhythm, same deliberate pacing. Same knuckle sound, the sound of a human hand on nylon, unmistakable. Ryan said something happened to him in that moment that he'd never felt before in a decade of solo camping. He'd had bear encounters, he'd had close calls on cliff edges, he'd been caught in lightning storms with no shelter. He knew what fear felt like in all its variations. What he felt in that moment was different. It was the specific fear of recognizing intelligence. I was the one who was lost. If this story is landing where I think it's landing, take 1 second right now and hit that like button. Drop a comment with the word knock if you've heard something outside at night that you couldn't explain. I want to know. And do not go anywhere. Story 3 is the one that kept me up writing it.
Story 3: The Wrong Door. Maya was 34, a pharmaceutical sales rep, and she traveled for work constantly. Motels and hotels were her natural habitat. She had stayed in hundreds of them over 8 years on the road. She had a system, honed by experience. Always request a room above the ground floor, always note the location of the emergency exits, always engage the deadbolt and the security bar, always check behind the shower curtain and inside the closet before settling in. She was not naive, she was methodical. She was the person who actually reads the emergency evacuation map on the back of the door, who knows which direction the stairs are before she needs them. She checked into a mid-range chain motel off I-70 in western Kansas on a Tuesday night in March. She was alone, she was tired, she had an early meeting the next morning. She took a second-floor room at the end of the corridor, quieter, fewer neighbors, further from the stairwell noise. She was in bed by 10:30, deadbolt engaged, security bar in place, phone charging on the nightstand. She was asleep by 11. At 2:08 a.m., a knock at her door woke her. 3 knocks, sharp, clear, confident. Knock, knock, knock. Maya sat up in the dark and looked at the door. The security bar was in place. She could see its silhouette against the thin line of corridor light coming under the door. The deadbolt was engaged. The red indicator was visible on the latch. She did not get up immediately. She lay still and listened. Nothing followed the knock. She checked her phone. 2:08 a.m. No messages, no missed calls from anyone who would have reason to be at her door at this hour. She got up and went to the door. She pressed her eye to the peephole. A man, standing directly in front of the door, close enough that the fisheye lens distorted his face into something wide and slightly unreal. He was middle-aged, ordinary-looking, wearing a gray t-shirt and jeans. He looked, in every visible way, like any other motel guest who had made an error. He knocked again. 3 knocks. Maya said through the door, "Who is it?" The man said, "Sorry to bother you. I'm locked out of my room. The front desk isn't answering. Do you have a phone I could use?" His voice was calm. His face, through the peephole, was composed, not distressed, not drunk, not aggressive. He looked like someone with a minor inconvenience asking for reasonable help. Maya said, "I'll call the front desk for you." She stepped back from the door and dialed the motel's front desk from her cell phone. The desk answered on the second ring, a young woman, alert, clearly not asleep. Maya said,
"There's a guest outside my door who says he's locked out and the desk isn't answering. His room number—" She turned back to the door. "What's your room number?" A pause. Then, 214. Maya repeated it to the desk clerk. She heard the clerk typing, then a pause. The clerk said, "Room 214 is unoccupied tonight. We have no guest in that room." Maya looked at the door. She said to the clerk, quietly, "I need you to call the police and send them to the second floor, right now. Don't announce it on the intercom." The clerk heard something in her voice and did not argue. Maya stepped back from the door and said nothing more. The man knocked one more time, 3 knocks, same rhythm, same patient, measured pace. Then silence. Maya stood in the center of her room, phone in hand, watching the thin line of corridor light under the door. The light changed. Not dramatically, not a shadow crossing it in a running sprint, not a violent blocking of the light, just a slight darkening at the center of the gap. That particular darkening that happens when something stands close to the other side of a door. Something was standing directly in front of her door. She could see its feet, the slight interruption of the corridor light. It was not moving. It was standing there, in the corridor, in front of her door at 2:10 in the morning after she had stopped responding. Waiting. She backed against the far wall and stood there, phone pressed to her chest, watching the gap under the door. The shadow stayed for what she estimates was 4 minutes, though she acknowledges it may have been less. Time does strange things when you're waiting for a door to be tried. Then the shadow moved, footsteps, slow, unhurried, moving away down the corridor, away from the stairwell direction, toward the far end of the corridor, toward the emergency exit. Maya heard the emergency exit door at the far end of the corridor open and close. She did not move until she heard voices in the corridor 9 minutes later, 2 police officers, the motel manager. She opened the door and the security bar swung out, and she realized her hands were shaking in a way she hadn't noticed until that moment. The officers searched the motel. They found no one. The emergency exit at the far end of the corridor led to an external staircase that went directly to the parking lot. By the time they checked, the parking lot had 3 cars in it. None of them matched anything useful. The motel manager pulled the corridor security footage. The footage showed the man arriving at Maya's door, knocking, waiting, speaking. You could see his mouth moving. Then standing in front of the door after Maya went quiet. Then walking slowly to the end of the corridor. Before he reached the emergency exit, he passed 5 other doors. He did not knock on any of them. He had come specifically to room 217, Maya's room. He knew which room to go to. The manager checked the check-in records for the evening. Maya had checked in at 7:48 p.m. At 7:49 p.m., 1 minute after her check-in, before she had even reached her room, a man had approached the front desk and asked which room was available on the second floor at the end of the corridor. The clerk on duty at 7:49 p.m. was different from the one Maya spoke to at 2:08 a.m. This clerk had told the man there were no available rooms at the end of the second floor corridor, all occupied, which told him exactly which rooms were occupied, which told Maya was in 217. He had waited 6 hours and 24 minutes. The patience of it, the 6 hours, the 3 knocks, the calm face at the peephole, the composed voice asking for a phone, is what Maya comes back to most. She told me, if I had opened that door, he had a story ready. The locked-out guest, the reasonable request, everything about it was designed to get me to open the door. And if I'd looked through that peephole and seen someone who seemed distressed, really distressed, panicked, scared, I think I would have opened it. She looked at her hands. He was too calm, That's what saved me. If he'd been more upset, more convincing, more human-looking through that peephole, I don't know what I would have done." She paused. "He practiced it," she said. "That's the only explanation for that level of calm. He had knocked on doors before. He knew exactly how to look and sound." She looked at me directly, and I think about all the doors he knocked on before mine, all the ones where someone opened up. 3 knocks, 3 stories, and any one of them made you glance at your door just now. Good, that's your instincts working. Drop knock knock in the comments if any of these stories made you think of a time you heard something at your door that didn't feel right. I read every single comment and I want to know your story. And tell me which of the 3 got to you the most: Donna's back door, Ryan's tent in the forest, or Maya's 6-hour wait. Comment your answer below. If you made it all the way to the closing, you are exactly who this channel is for. Hit subscribe so you never miss a story. New horror narratives every Tuesday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Next week, a woman checks into a cabin rental and finds evidence that someone has been living there for months before she arrived. The rental company says the cabin is empty. The cabin's camera tells a different story. Good night, lock your doors, and if you hear 3 knocks tonight, don't answer.